Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel and you're watching TechStrong TV. Welcome to Wednesday, April 22nd, and we are safe, we're well, we're strong, we're TechStrong. I'm doing this now a number of weeks. I hope you folks are enjoying it. We've kind of hit our stride a little bit. Today we don't even have any of our old archive videos today. It's going to be all recent stuff that we've recorded over the last day or so, interviews and so forth. So I hope you'll enjoy it. You know the routine by now. If you'd like to follow along, ask questions, comment, etc., you can do so on our community Slack channel, which is techstrongtv.slack.com, and you can get an invite to the community Slack channel from visiting us on our website at techstrong.tv. Now, you might be watching this on techstrong.tv. You may be watching this on Facebook Live or LinkedIn Live, on our YouTube DevOps TV channel, or maybe on the media ops sites, DevOps.com, Container Journal, Security Boulevard. My favorite way of watching this, though, is on my TV during the day, or even if I catch it in the evening, the rebroadcast on demand. And you can do that on the Roku, Apple TV platform, or Amazon Fire TV platform from downloading the DevOps.com app. And I will tell you, it's a great way to follow along here. It's a great way to watch the show. It's shot in HD and it looks well on TVs. And of course, you can also watch it on your mobile, whether it be a phone or a tablet, again, on the DevOps.com app. And those are always available on demand. With that being said, let's talk about what we've got in store for you today. First of all, I've got a good discussion with Sean Ahmed. Sean is one of the leaders over at CloudBees, and he's going to talk to us today about best practices for leading a remote development team. Timely, certainly, with what we're all dealing with. And Sean's always a great guy to interview. I think you'll enjoy my discussion with him. After Sean, I have an interview with Dawn Morrissey, who's the CEO of Data Connectors. For those of you who are not familiar, Data Connectors is a organization that was putting on in-person physical conferences in about 50 different cities, what we call tier 2 cities. So maybe not San Francisco or Vegas, but or Orlando, but tier 2 cities. They go to Des Moines, Iowa, and Milwaukee, and a lot of cities that maybe aren't getting a lot of conferences. And they're smaller conferences, a few hundred people, under 1,000 certainly. And obviously this has had a huge impact. This whole COVID thing's had a huge impact on their business, as many have done. They've moved over to the virtual format for virtual events. Though in talking with Dawn, you'll see that their idea of a virtual event is kind of taking a live event and taking it virtual. I don't know if that long term is the answer. I think virtual events are virtual, and you shouldn't try to shove a live event into them. But you can't argue with their success, and Dawn's going to tell you a little bit about what they're doing. And then after that, I'm happy to interview a company recently emerged out of stealth called ENV0, ENV0, and with their CEO, co-founder, Ohad Mazlish from Israel. And they're also based in Sunnyvale, I think, out in the Bay Area anyway. And Ohad's going to tell us a little bit about what N0 is about. And then after that, stay tuned for a really great interview I had with our own Bob Resselman, of course, of RollBob fame. He's also a fantastic writer on automation and the future of job security. He's done a great comic series we have over on Security Boulevard and Container Journal on containers, or actually on microservices and the decoupling. Is a great story arc. And most recently, Bob's published an ebook, a PDF, made up of his essays, collected essays around the effects automation is going to have on us all. So please check that out. But the interview with Bob's really interesting. Good stuff. Stay tuned for that. After that, I'll be back with the news, and then we'll, of course, head over to Charlene. Charlene's guest today is Richard Wang for Tech for America, and they're mobilizing developers to volunteer their services to help companies adapt and to survive the COVID-19 pandemic. Good stuff there. And then from there, we'll move over to the analyst corner with Mitch. Mitchell Ashley has some great stuff lined up. And wrapping up today is Wednesday. So running the anchor lab for us every Wednesday, as she does, is the CEO of the DevOps Institute, Jane Grohl. And Jane will have some interesting information. I'll be back afterwards for closing remarks. But we're going to get our show started right now. Here's a quick word from our sponsor, and I'll be right back.
Tech is strong. We may be working from home, but tech goes on. Tech will continue to collaborate. Tech will continue to communicate. Tech is strong. Join us for TechStrong Con, June 4th, 12 hours strong, TechStrong. Featuring John Bacha-Galupe Willis, Shannon Leitz, William Hurley, Jasmine James, Kat Swatell, Cornelia Davis, James Wickett, Courtney Kistler, Damon Edwards. Live Q&A with speakers, exhibit halls, and more. Free, but register before spots fill at techstrongcon.com.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Okay, everyone. We're here with Sean Ahmed of CloudBees. And Sean's actually a frequent guest, as many of the CloudBees folks are, on what we do here around DevOps.com and on TechStrong TV. Sean, welcome to TechStrong TV. How are you?
Good, Alan. Good to be with you again. I appreciate you having me on.
No, it's actually our pleasure to have you on. And just getting some noise here on the watch. We'll get rid of that. Sean, I wanted to have you on here because I wanted to talk around remote workers, which is, a topic that's fairly on everyone's top of mind list these days. And I mean, everyone 85% of the people watching this are watching this from home, right? 90% maybe are watching this from home. And it's one thing to be a worker working from home. I want our talk today to concentrate on what it's like to be a supervisor, a manager, an executive, trying to manage that remote team, keep it from developing into herding cats and chaos. How do we bring this together? What are some good practices, tips, best practices that you can share with people that'll help those people who all of a sudden, have never managed a remote team before now, come to terms and make the best of it? What do you think?
Let's do it. I think that's a really good topic. And for, remote working, I mean, there's definitely the world of remote working before COVID-19 and this pandemic, and then there's remote work during this pandemic. And it's a little different, certainly, for many, because those who have sort of been used to remote working and managing remote teams in the past, for them, there's a certain institutional knowledge that has been built over the years. But for those that have never done this before, and due to the pandemic, who are being forced to have to adapt this new remote working style, it's clearly a different ball game, and they're having to learn on the fly. And so I think these types of conversations are really great because CloudBees as a company, and I, being here at CloudBees, we've always been remote first from the get-go. So there's a lot to learn for those who are doing it for the first time from those that, I'm sure you're interviewing, me included, that have done it for a very long time. So I think the topic is relevant, timely, and in need for those who are trying this out for the first time, for sure. So let's do it.
Yep. Go ahead. So what would you say? Look, I try to tell my salespeople this. Don't give me your top 3 things, right? Let's not go too far. But if you had to pick 3 things to tell people, Sean, of what they can do to more effectively manage their remote workers. And keep in mind, too, quite frankly, I think it's one thing to manage a remote finance team. I think it's another thing to manage a remote DevOps team or software development team. And because our audience, frankly, doesn't get a lot of finance people on the, let's focus on more of those technical sort of folks.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Look, you said 3 things, I think.
Yep.
As a leader, there's definitely three things that are always on my mind, pre-COVID, also just remote working in general, but that are accentuated in one way or another in this COVID period of time that you have to keep in mind front and center. I think as a leader, first and foremost, during these times, you got to have a ton of empathy. The ball game has changed for people. It's so stressful as it is already with the pandemic, and already when you're working remote, you can have certain amount of isolation of employees, feeling a little isolated away from everybody else. But during this time, not only are you dealing with isolation, but you might be dealing with scare of the pandemic. You're dealing with children downloading Netflix and 3 kids watching Netflix at the same time as you're trying to have a video conference. Plus your wife might be working from home. You might have parents at home, and you're trying to manage the fact that, do I have food? Where do I get enough food from? You're trying to manage health. You're trying to manage family. You got maybe a kid that walks in the middle of a video conference going, Dad, where's my lunch, right? And the list goes on. And so as a leader, you just have to have a ton of empathy with your team members that, these things are the new norm. And that instead of focusing on micromanaging your team's day, which even pre-COVID, I never did with my team, you have to focus on outcomes and have empathy. So deal first and foremost with the outcomes that you want your teams to be driving, and let the team find the mojo. Let the team find its operating rhythm that is going to be the operating rhythm for them. And that they don't feel squeezed into, I must work from this time to that time, uninterrupted, and this time, and so on and so forth. Because all of that type of stuff just leads to guilt. If you can't do it, it just gets them feeling guilty and feels like, oh, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to. So how they do their job is not as important as reaching the outcomes, and let them find their way. So that's number one. Have a ton of empathy. I'd say that. Second is morale. I mean, I always find that it's crucially important to keep an eye on your morale of your team, because you're not in an office. You can't sense the vibe and morale around the lunch table with your team. And so it's not like you can take them to the bar, have a drink after work, and see how that morale is going. You don't have all those sort of physical, interactions that you tend to have when you're in an office. So there's ways that you have to find how you're going to keep the morale high and the atmosphere of your team feeling in tip top. And I find that things like giving people a ton of recognition, even with small accomplishments when they occur, celebrating them, really, really important, right? It's important that you don't let them burn out. You try to check in with them, simple things like a good morning Slack message and a good good evening or something like that as your day are ending, just to have these little check-in points to make sure that they're not working themselves out to burnout is really, really important. And most importantly, during this second point is, as a leader, goodness gracious, please model the behavior you want others to have yourself as well. And this is really hard. As a leader, you tend to be in the work all the time. You're thinking about it. So if you're about to hit a Slack message, it's Saturday, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe don't hit that Slack button, right? Just don't hit send. Maybe keep yourself and let them relax and you relax. So that's really important. And I think number 3, I think, and final one, so is for me is really to make sure that your teams feel like they're connected to their teams. And this is more about having an environment, tool, and a setup that helps them feel connected to the greater hive, if you will, and no pun intended, right? Cloud bees, hive. Mm-hmm. So you want your bees, as I say, right? You want your bees to, virtually be in the hive. And that means you got to have the right collaboration setup for your teams. Don't ever underestimate the need for Slack or Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts, Zoom, all the tools that are required. It's really up to you as a leader to ensure that the collective feels connected, even though there's thousands of miles between them. So these 3 are
those are 3 great things. The first one about empathy and recognizing people will work if they work. We're seeing a very similar thing because we do a lot of virtual events. truth be told, Sean, it's much better to be lucky than smart in business, I've learned over my lifetime. And we got into virtual events a year and a half, 2 years ago well before this was on the horizon. I just kind of like the idea of doing these virtual events. And now, of course, with this, we have the world knocking at our door to help them with virtual events. But one of the biggest mistakes we're seeing people make is that they're trying to shove their live physical event into a virtual event container. And a live physical event is not a virtual event. At a virtual event, you could tell people that, Sean Ahmed's talking at 9 o'clock, and they may come in at 9 o'clock to see you. But they may also have to take their kid or, do homeschooling with their kid or do something else. Your talk is being recorded and it's available on demand anyway, and they want to come in at 10 o'clock because that's when they can. But they don't want to miss Sean's thing. And look, if they were in a hotel somewhere 1,000 miles from home, and this is when you were going off live, they'd have to be there. But they're not. They're at home dealing with a whole bunch of different things. And so they're going to come on their schedule, not your schedule. And so you can't force people, especially people working from home and juggling being a parent, a spouse, a manager, a contributor, and God knows what else, hopefully not a caregiver to someone who's sick, right? You can't tell them this is when you have to do this, right? I think what you said, be more concerned about the outcomes is key now. And so I think that's a real lesson to learn here, that working from home is not working in the office. And so there are different rules, a different cadence, if you will, right? A different kind of rhythm to it. And as a manager, here's another thing I've learned, and I hate to turn this into what I've learned versus, but another thing I've learned is, as a manager, the beatings will continue until morale improves is one management style, but it's not very effective, right? You got to lay off of that, right? You can't rip people's arms off and beat them over the head because they don't do things that you want to do when they want to do, when you want them to do, and how you want to do, and on what you want to do. Be concerned with the outcome, as you say. And that if I had to pick one golden rule, I think that's the golden rule, Sean. Be concerned with the outcome, not the means, if you will. Make sense?
Makes total sense. I couldn't agree more. And in fact, I think, just to add to your point, I think people forget this a lot, and they're learning it the hard way, and they're learning it very fast in this COVID world that we're currently facing. But personally, I've just seen this and learned it in pre-COVID world. Remote work is not for everyone. So everyone is not going to fit into this box and just go, oh, I love it. I love working remote. Add to the fact that you're now also in this pandemic situation, it's dually not for a lot of people. It's dually going to be, in fact, like, you don't like remote work, and who wants to be locked in at home with 5 other folks and trying to work remote at the same time when you've spent a lifetime adjusting and living by getting in your car, getting to an office, having a dedicated work environment, shutting it down, coming home, and then leave work at work, and then now you're with family. Now these two worlds are colliding in such profound ways that it's not going to be for everyone. And I think as a leader, that's really important to remember, that this is not going to be for everyone. And that's why it's so dually important, as you say, that if you take a golden nugget away, take the golden nugget away, which is focus on the outcome. Yeah. You can still drive the outcome. The means can still be not something you love. You don't love the remote work, but if you allow your team members to really feel like they have the freedom to operate in such a way that within their world realm and what's reality for them, they can reach the outcome, then that's all we should care about as leaders. We should care about that. Yeah. And showing empathy means that that's what you're caring about, so that you're not focusing on micromanaging every day, click this many button clicks, get that done. I need to see you check in this many. Why didn't you answer that Slack at that time? And so on and so forth. All of that is just the means to get to the goal, which is the outcome. So if that person does that all over the weekend and that's the way that they love working, so then okay, right? It's your gig. So that's something I've learned the hard way. It's not going to be for everybody. And I've learned that, in a pre-COVID world, when it's not for everybody, you have to deal with that. And some people will then find that better ways. But right now you don't have the choice. So you have to be duly careful.
Absolutely. Let's turn our attention to a post-COVID world, God willing, quickly. How much of this, working from home is going to stick?
Ooh, look at my prediction ball. Make a prediction into the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a tough one to tell, but I do believe that a lot of this is going to stay. I think a lot of this, what is forced today, is likely to become standard tomorrow. And for a lot of variety of factors, by the way, that don't just have to do with the leaders, but, it just has to do with a number of vectors. I think about this all the time. There was some statistic somewhere that said something like 90% or 85% of corporate America don't own the properties they're on, and they rent them and lease them. And I thought to myself the other day, I wonder if they get the same productivity by everybody working at home at a fraction of the cost, and that's a successful model, why do you need a building again?
Yeah. Well, why do you need an office? We've interviewed a few folks who said they're going to give up their office. They're never going back. I don't think it's a rosy outlook for commercial real estate, is the bottom line. I mean, that's not a business I'd want my kids going into right now. But, Sean, I'll tell you this. So I spent about 15 years more, 15 plus years working remotely prior to doing media ops. And I really looked forward to having an office at media ops because there are hard things about working from home. That on off, if you will, is a hard thing. When you're home, it seems like you're always on. The idea of just getting up in the morning, getting dressed and coming to the office and doing your work and the water cooler talk and all of that appeals to me. But look, we're working remote here, and we did, Accelerated Strategies Group is this analyst firm that we helped spin up, and they're working with Cloudbees on a bunch of things. And they did a flash poll this week asking people, when this is over, would you prefer to work from home all the time, maybe 3 days a week, occasionally, or, work always from the office? 15% said they'll only want to work from the office. 30-something percent, 32, 33% said they just want to work from home. Work from home always, or work from home 3 days or more a week, was over 50% of the people. Now, in the tech world, we probably have a higher percentage of people work from home than the general population, but still, 50% of people said they prefer to work from home that much. There's something to be said for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, across, so we're talking about these vectors, and that's a really important vector. I presented one vector, which is sort of the company commercial financial aspect of working from home versus the outcomes driven. And I'm assuming that a lot of leaders will be asking themselves the question, does this make sense for us? You're bringing a really great, and backing it up with data, which is fantastic. And I think I couldn't agree more. I think there's a lot of industries and companies and folks that have worked within those industries that to whom remote work was an alien concept, right? They never did it before, and they're in that now. And I think what they're learning is what we've learned in the field of software, long time ago, which is that there's a certain focus flow that comes with working from home that you just cannot get at the office. It's just
absolutely.
We tend to have these. I do this even remotely. I do this, but duly so if I'm in an office, which is I block my calendar. I have to protect my calendar away.
Right. Well, you
So,
all
like,
do.
having
Look,
a meeting
you
or
have
just
no
sticking your
idea.
head in the room and just going, "Hey, can I grab you for 10 minutes, please?"
Yeah.
You know, so you're trying to protect yourself from those interruption concepts. And now at home, you know, you're kind of like in this situation where you're going, "My God, this isn't so bad." You know, it's like,
Yeah, no, it isn't. Sean, we spoke, I'm trying to remember who it was, but we spoke to someone last week who said basically, if you take the productivity of the average person in an office, assuming they work an 8-hour day, and strip out all the BS meetings, the water cooler talk, the lunch, the everything, and put them at home, they'll finish the same amount of work at home in about 4 to 5 hours that they do in a whole day at the office. Right? And that doesn't include commuting time and everything else, right? So when we say an 8-hour day, add up maybe an hour each way or a half hour each way, you know, so it's 9-10 hours a day. You can get done in 4 or 5 hours at home because you don't have as many distractions. And so not only are you not only financially from a business point of view, are you wasting money on your physical infrastructure at that point, you're getting a lot more productivity from people at home. Even if they work 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day, you're getting more out of them than you do in the 8 hours that they're in the office. So again, something to think about.
oh, 100%. And not to take you back from you took me down a road of post COVID-19.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Like that's fine. But I'm going to take you back a little bit too. And I'm just going to say, you asked me about leadership advice earlier, you know, what my advice would be for leaders who are in this situation now. And it just brought up a thought in my head that I thought, oh man, I have to share this because this is a learning I've gone through myself. Post-COVID world, or even COVID world, pre-COVID world. Look, just because somebody's working remote, and this is a new experience for you, don't fill up your calendar with 1,000 calls with your team
To show how busy you are. Yeah.
Compensate for the fact that you're guys
Right.
remote.
That's an overcompensation for sure.
Yeah. So just
And you prevent everyone else from doing work. I hear you, Sean. We're about out of time here.
All right.
This was the longest 15-minute interview we've ever done, huh? But it's all good. It works out well. Hey, I'm glad to see you well. Continue, stay healthy and health there.
Likewise.
And at some point, this is going to end, and we'll see each other in person again. But until then, keep doing what you're doing, man.
Likewise, Alan.
All right.
Always a pleasure being with you. All right. Take care.
All right, a pleasure. Hey, Sean Ahmed from CloudBees here on TechStrong TV.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, back here in the studio. As I mentioned in our opening remarks, Data Connectors is a company that was doing up to 50 events a year, which is quite a pace, mostly in Tier 2 cities around cybersecurity. They have like 650,000 people who have attended Data Connectors over the years. And this COVID thing has kind of stopped that in its tracks, but they've switched horses over to virtual. And they're holding virtual events, but a little different than other people are doing in that they're really still trying to focus them geographically, even though it's virtual. And they really want it live rather than people coming after the fact. I think this is an interesting way station we're seeing as people who more from live events move to virtual events, and they're trying to recreate their live events virtually. I think longer term people are going to realize, we've been doing virtual events here for 2 years. People are going to realize that virtual events are a different animal, and it's not the best way to leverage the virtual platform. But nevertheless, Dawn and the Data Connector folks have had a tremendous amount of success over the years with their live events, and they hope to be going back to them as soon as the government allows. I don't know if I would go until I really felt comfortable, but I'll leave that to you. But here's my conversation with Dawn Morrissey for Data Connectors.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. We're back here. I'm happy to have a guest who actually I had known in a previous world. In my previous role, it's Still Secure a long time ago. But it's Dawn Morrissey. She's the CEO of Data Connectors. Data Connectors. Dawn, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you. So, Dawn, it's actually our pleasure to have you here. And as we can see from the sign behind you, Data Connectors, it's my funny French accent up high, I apologize. Data Connectors has been putting on cybersecurity events since 1999. And it's funny, I've been in they didn't call it cybersecurity then, right? It was InfoSec. But I've been in security since 1999. So it's a weird kind of connection there. But for those of in our audience who may not be familiar with Data Connectors, why don't you give them a little background?
Well, I can tell you what we do now until this COVID crisis is we hosted 50 cybersecurity summits across North America each year. But of course, we had to work up to that many. Back in the day in 1999, when I first started the company, we actually did HIPAA compliance conferences first. If you can remember when everyone had a deadline for HIPAA compliance. So we started with that. Once everyone became compliant, then we made a switch to Sarbanes-Oxley and different compliance.
Oh, yeah.
Security.
That's a blast from the past. Yep.
Yeah, a long time ago. And then
GLB.
It sort of shifted to a more general IT security. Like you said, it was called IT security or InfoSec back then. And we started out doing maybe 4 of these conferences a year, and then 8, and then 16, and 32, and eventually we built it up to 50 cities across North America. And I can tell you that probably what we're known the most for, number one, a lot of people have heard of us because we're in so many different local markets. But number 2, we've been around for a very long time, as you know. But I would say our specialty is being local. We put together conferences in not also tier 1 cities, but tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities. And I think that's where we differ from like an RSA or a Black Hat. We can actually bring this info to local communities, such as like a Des Moines or a Little Rock or a New York or Toronto, Montreal, anywhere. And I think that's where we're different. They're smaller conferences, but we're bringing to local communities a way for them to get the latest and greatest technology without them having to fly to San Francisco to go to a big conference or Las Vegas to go to another big conference. And I also feel like our conversations, the companies that participate with us, such as Still Secure, which you guys did do many, many years ago, it gives us sales reps more of an opportunity to have a more intimate conversation rather than just scanning a badge and just feeling like you're there just for the company. So I feel like our strength and where we're different from everyone is that we do provide more of those one-on-one conversations, and we are able to bring these conferences to smaller markets that otherwise wouldn't get the opportunity.
Absolutely. And I remember that back from my Still Secure days. But even so, I left Still Secure in 2009, right? I was there for 9 years, founding that and moved on. But the great thing about Data Connectors, as you said, is it wasn't RSA or Black Hat, but if you wanted to be, even in Chicago or Detroit or Milwaukee or St. Louis and Kansas City and Dallas and, that whole, where people are, Charlotte, back before Charlotte was, quite the hot spot maybe it is these days. But, and the other thing about it, Dawn, was you could do you could do 3 data connector shows in 2 weeks, right? As a vendor, right? Or you could, you move them around where, you go to RSA, you're paying $500-600 a night a hotel for each of your people, the booth space. I mean, to do an RSA show, you're committing $100,000 for the 3 or 4 days minimum. And it was Black Hat's no cheaper, frankly. I don't mean to single out RSA conference. There was a place, I don't know, we're going to talk about what the future holds, but there was a place for these big mega conferences with 30 and 40 and 50,000 people. But there's also a place for conferences of 2,500 people or 3,500 people, or even in some cities, 800 people's a big crowd. Right, 500 people is a huge crowd. I did this when we first started DevOps.com. We were doing what we call DevOps Connect, and we would do small DevOps shows. And it was great because you get the local community in, and you really get a chance to chat, birds of a feather sessions and stuff like that, where you can really do it. So I think we get the flavor. COVID-19, of course, has stopped these in-persons dead in their tracks. What are you guys doing?
Well, what we did, and we have been complimented by many of our vendor partners on how quickly we were able to turn this around. I believe we had to reschedule one conference, and within 10 days, we were able to make a live virtual cybersecurity summit platform in every city that we already have scheduled.
That's fantastic.
The great thing about it, and little did we know because we've never tried this before, we were forced to with the whole COVID crisis, but cities like Los Angeles, for example, that is where we had our first virtual live cybersecurity summit. We normally would get 300, maybe 400 people registered in that city, and we had over 850 registered for the virtual summit. So
Great.
I feel like this is an even better opportunity for us to reach out further. Normally we would, for each market, just try and to market to maybe 100 miles within the radius of where the conference was going to be physically taking place. We're able to reach out further to people that might not be able to make it through this virtual platform. And since LA, we've also had Hartford, and then we had Detroit just earlier today. And in those cities, we've doubled and tripled our attendance as well. So I'm really excited that people that normally can't afford to drive and stay the night or go to even one of the smaller conferences, they've got access now. And so I'm really happy about that. It's turned out to be a really good opportunity for both
Absolutely.
us and people needing the technology information.
Yeah, as I was talking off camera with you, we've been doing virtual events for about 2 years here at MediaOps, and we've learned a lot of lessons. We'll talk off camera, I can tell you.
Yeah.
But one of the things we learned is that with the virtual conference, they don't know any borders. They don't know any geographic locale. It's as easy for someone from Bangalore as it is from someone from Bangor to log on to your event that's LA, right? And that's a good thing. Other kinds of things I've learned is that in a virtual conference, people, if they don't catch the live keynote at 9 o'clock, they can watch it later too, because in these virtual events people can do it on their time as well, which is a little easier, than it is. I wanted a curious question, because this has come up. I've spoken to several event producers who have transitioned to a virtual platform. Are you charging admission for people to attend the virtual? Is it less money than you would an in-person, or how are you finding that? What feedback have you gotten?
So far, a couple of things. You talked about our conferences, the LA, maybe having somebody on the other side of the world tune in. We're being very careful to still keep them local. When I say normally, that's what we are known to be, is to service the local smaller markets. Of course, we have all the big markets too, but no, we're not inviting people from out of that local area. I just want to be clear on that. And what was your question again? I'm sorry.
It's okay. In terms of, for people to attend, are you charging them to attend, or is it a free thing, and how does that compare to what you do in a physical event?
Okay, so right now we're not charging people if they are registered and they are there live on the day of the conference. We are kicking around all of our materials, are also the speaker presentations, any of the exhibit booth materials. They are all available for 60 days on demand after the conference. And we're kind of kicking around because we want people at our conference. So for instance, you talked about the keynote and maybe being able to watch it later. At our conferences, if the keynote starts at 9 a.m. and you come in at 9:10, then you've missed the first 10 minutes. They are truly live conferences. So we've kind of kicked around, okay, well, if you didn't show up for our conference in person, we don't want to encourage you to wait and do it later, because we do have a certain responsibility to our vendor partners as well. So we've thought about possibly charging them if they're not there on the day of the conference, but they still want to get the information later while we're in this virtual environment right now. And as far as before, we would charge anywhere from $50 to $400 for an attendee to come in. We do work with nonprofits, and we'll do certain trades, if you will, for promoting our
we all do
memberships. But generally between $50 and $400 is what we would charge.
Yeah. I mean, Dawn,
with this being virtual and not hands-on, and we're not feeding them lunch and all of that anymore, we've had to make some concessions. So.
Well, your costs are different, obviously. I think the bigger question I was trying to get at with you is that we're in a kind of brave new world here, right? People are figuring it out as we go, and establishing models, right? And while it's normal to charge something for a physical event, as you said, you got to give them lunch. There's cost, there's hard costs involved.
Yeah.
The model on should you charge for virtual? If so, what should you charge? And how does that all work? I think we're still kind of figuring that out as we go.
We absolutely are, yes.
So I just wanted to kind of get your 2 cents on it. I know we haven't charged either. It's crossed our mind, but I just don't know. I don't know what that new world looks like yet to tell you. And it sounds like you're kind of figuring it out too.
Well, what we're thinking is, we don't want to, by making all of the presentation materials, the slides, all the exhibit materials available on demand for 60 days, we don't want to discourage people from attending the day of, because that will hurt us. So we are considering charging. You had to be registered, but if you weren't able to make it, you can create an account and be able to get to the materials that way. But we really want to discourage them coming back later, because we want it to be a truly live virtual conference. But just like you said, we don't know what the price is going to be yet. We're still learning too.
I think we got to figure that out.
Yeah.
2 other quick, just one thought. I'm interested in your thing. What do you get from the people being there live that you don't get from their being on demand?
I think just the human interaction. I mean, I was excited to see my CISO panel on a Zoom meeting, because it was just people outside of my house. But, and you can't get the networking happy hour that we always have at every conference. Just the face-to-face interaction that we're just not getting now. Our conferences, you still virtually can go and visit the booths, but you can't really stand there and talk to them for a long time without it being a little bit awkward, because it's silent and we're so far away. So I think the in-person's much more intimate, of course, I guess.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, look, if I had my world and I could wave a wand, I would like every person at these virtual events to be an avatar. And so you would see an avatar of me, and I'd say, hey, Dawn, and you'd say, hey, Alan, you know, and even maybe a little bubble over our head as the words are going. But I haven't found that yet. If I do, I'll let you know. Dawn, let me go in another direction with you, though, if you don't mind. God willing, at some point this ends, right? And we go back to whatever the new normal is. Is the new normal going back to the in-person? Will you always wind up doing will you have a mix of virtual and in-person from this? Or what do you think?
Well, what we've kind of talked about, because we're taking this month by month, depending on governmental restrictions. So up to this point, through June, we are going to stick with virtual. But I believe our very last conference of the month of June, we're going to do both live and virtual, because we know that not everybody's going to be able to get out and travel immediately. We think it's going to be a slow transition. So our transition is going to be virtual and live at the same time. And now that we've learned how to do virtual, we've thought about continuing with our 50-city run across North America, but then also maybe having virtual conferences that perhaps just focus on healthcare industry, or just focus on government, or what have you. And
so
still
verticals.
Do virtual now that we know how to do them, but just make them more industry focused. And we have over 650,000 members in our cybersecurity community. And now that number's getting a lot higher since we're able to reach more people this way. But we want to kind of bring that whole community together virtually on top of our live conferences, but just make it more industry focused. And I think that's the direction we're going to take. We're going to do both.
Yep. Well, as we sit here today, let's see what the future holds, and hopefully by the end of June we can start gathering. Though I think the social distance, so I always tell people this, Dawn, who asked me this question, the government can make any regulations they want. If people aren't going to feel comfortable gathering, it makes no difference. I don't care what a president, a governor, a mayor, or the dog catcher says. If I feel I'm putting myself in danger, or if I feel I'm not putting myself in danger, I'll go, right? So I think it's about public confidence, right? And I think that's what we got to get to.
Yeah, which is why we're going to do both first. For those people that aren't comfortable going to large gatherings, even though they're allowed to, they'll still have the virtual option. So we're going to kind of do both until everybody's comfortable and we're completely through all of this. And then we'll change our focus a little bit on the virtual side.
Yep. Let's hope that's sooner than later.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm ready to get out.
I hear you. All right. Dawn Morrissey, CEO of Data Connectors. Thanks for being our guest on TechStrong TV.
Thanks so much, Alan. I appreciate it.
All right. I hope to see you in person one of these days sooner than later, but let's hope for the best. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. We'll be right back. All right, back here in the studio. Our next segment is a new company coming out of stealth just yesterday, and it's called Env0, ENV0, the number 0, and their CEO founder is Ohad Maslish. Ohad's going to tell us all about Env0 and really talk to us about kind of what the journey was here for him as he, came up with the idea and looked for co-founders, got funding, and really built a company from scratch. I've done it. There's nothing more invigorating if you have a burning desire to do so. So let's tune in now with Ohad Maslish, CEO and co-founder of Env0.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel here on TechStrong TV. We're happy today to break a story about a new company emerging from stealth, kind of, right? Announcing funding, coming out into the market. A company based in Israel and I believe in Sunnyvale, California. The name of the company is Env0, ENV0. And I'm happy to be joined by the CEO, one of the co-founders, Ohad Mazlish. Is that correct? Ohad, if I messed it up, correct me, please. Okay. Ohad, thanks for joining us today. And congratulations. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you very much. We're very excited launching our product today, and thank you for having me here.
Oh, it's really, you know what, so I've been an entrepreneur for about 30 plus years, launched a few companies and products in my day, venture-backed companies, and it's exciting, and congratulations to you. It's an exciting thing. We can get into the money raise and all of that stuff later. I wanted to focus in a little bit now on the product. So, who knows it better than you? Tell our audience, what is it that M0 does?
M0 is focusing on the shift to infrastructure as code and providing management and automation on top of it. So you can look at it as the difference between Git and GitHub, that Git is the technical framework, but GitHub is the business solution on top of those great frameworks such as Git. And so the same goes for M0. We've seen that there is a huge shift to infrastructure as code, mainly Terraform, but others such as CloudFormation and like Pulumi is a great technology as well. On the other hand, just using the frameworks is not enough for companies, and it, by the way, creates them a new problem. We believe that this new infrastructure as code technology is like a new weapon. So using it irresponsibly can create a lot of damage, and mainly cost. You can easily change code and run it and create a lot of cost problem for your organization. So we want to provide the visibility, predictability, and governance for the admins, while focusing on the end user, the developers, to be able to easily run and test your code as if it was your local private environment. So we provide self-service platform for the developers and other stakeholders that need cloud resources, while providing governance and better cost management for the organization.
Excellent. So let me ask a few questions if you don't mind. You made the GitHub analogy. So and it was interesting, we just recently had the 15th anniversary of Git, right, from the original launch of Git, and then of course GitHub, GitLab, and then the rest. But what they had there with Git is you had a very clearly defined sort of software application, if you will, right, this project Git that you could run whether it be in a cloud, on-prem, or anywhere. And it was a repository and a version control, the basic Git functions that it was originally designed for. One of the issues we run into in the infrastructure as code space is it's a very hard thing to put your thumb on, right? Whether you're running any of the public clouds, a private kind of cloud, or what have you, there's a wide variety of different kinds of it. You're doing containerized stuff with Kubernetes and Docker. Are you running hypervisor? Containers on bare metal. There's so much. It seems like a really hard thing for people to get their hands around. How does N0 get their hands around that?
One of the things we focus on is to simplify this process. And there have been a few trends in the last few years that made cloud environments, much more complicated. I would like to mention 2 or 3. So one of those is the shift from monolithics to microservices.
Sure.
So you have many more small pieces communicating together. And the other is the shift from, let's call it VMs or containers, homogenical kind of structure, into cloud native. You've mentioned Kubernetes. It's just one part. We've seen a lot of serverless, and also the most problematic thing to model in your application are the SaaS vendors, the external SaaS vendors that are a crucial part of your app. It can be Auth0 for authentication, SendGrid for emails. It can be Stripe for payments, and all of those are part of your application. Now, how you control that and manage different but yet similar environments for different purposes. The story of M0 started in my previous company. I had a services company helping companies to move to the cloud and DevOps. And one of the use cases which we support in M0 that we've seen there is that they needed a multi-region solution because they had AWS production in the United States, and the European potential customers were unwilling to put their data in the United States due to GDPR. So they were wondering how to do multi-region for a very complicated environment. They had pretty much everything written in Terraform, but it was not enough for a solution for the company to deploy, for updates, to manage, to understand the cost, to understand how to manage this process. And they worked very hard in order to provide solution for their European potential customers. So this made me think, and the first thing I did was talking to 50 more companies, understanding what are they doing with infrastructure as code? Is this something big that they're doing, planning to do? And what are the challenges? So, everybody said that the cloud environments became much more complicated, and they need some management and automation to provide tools to both their ops and admins, their DevOps, to manage this process. And on the other hand, they all suffer from how regular developers, they look like, okay? Usually 10 years ago, your app might have been just a basic Java service, monolith on JVM, maybe database in MySQL or Postgres, and that's basically it. So you can easily run it on your laptop. Now, if you have BigQuery, if you have Lambda, if you have SendGrid or Stripe in your app, how the developers should be able to test that. So we've seen shifts to shared cloud environments for development purposes, and this made the developers very frustrated. And that's one of the things that the executives constantly tell us, how they can empower the developers with self-service environments without, losing control, because there's so many different pieces, so many places you can create cost and security problems. So they want to have both worlds, both self-service, productivity, and cloud governance.
Absolutely. So, I look at this, though, and so there's a lot of masters to serve here. Do you know what I mean? There's the developers, there's the DevOps, there's the executives, the financial people, right? Because everyone's like, what kind of build did I get from AWS? How? It's a big mission. Give me an idea. How is the N0 product sort of designed to, to play in all of these different sandboxes, if you will?
All right. So let me give another analogy. If you're a developer, basically an employee in a company, you have your equipment. Okay, you have your chair, your desktop, laptop. You have your screen, monitor. You have your keyboard. And you even have your coffee mug. And sometimes, things break and you need a new one, okay? So let's say you need a new chair, okay, or a new keyboard. So one option is that the company allows you to get their credit card and buy a new chair, okay, or a new keyboard. But that's not scalable because people can abuse it. They can use it for maybe expensive chairs, or maybe even not buying chairs, doing other things. So companies try to do other things. So maybe they have a room with chairs and you can open a ticket and grab one. But you need a new chair every once in a while. What happens if you need things often on a daily basis? So how you manage that? So think about that we invented the magical credit card, and we empower companies to give their employees, their developers, let's say $1,000 a month. And this credit card is a magical credit card in the sense that it has only 8 or 10 items in its catalog. So you can buy 3 types of chairs, 2 types of keyboard, and 2 types of coffee mugs. Do whatever you want as long as you don't cross the $1,000 a month limit. You're allowed to do whatever you want. So the same goes to cloud resources. We found a way, thanks to infrastructure as code technology, that it's both easy and simple for the developer and governed for the organization, and the user can do whatever they want, and the admin on the other hand has full visibility and control on this process with very limited risk for the entire company.
Excellent. That was a great analogy. Good stuff. If you don't mind, I want to turn to a different subject. So you mentioned you had a consulting company. You were doing consulting with clients and saw this problem. And as a result of that, you built a solution that is now M0. I think there's a lot of people out here who are sitting in the same place you were a couple of years ago, and they think about, hey man, I should just build a product that does this, or a service, and do that, right? Instead of doing the consulting thing, right? Because consulting is its own thing. Some people love it, some don't. So help the next guy. Pay it forward. The person sitting out here, also a consultant, who has an idea of, we should productize this. How did you and your co-founders go about taking, seeing a problem and building a solution, not just for your consulting clients, but for the market and the company?
So M0 is my second startup and my third company. So I had a startup, a consulting company, and then M0. And which means that I entered being a consultant with experience in fundraising and having a startup and customers worldwide. So I didn't expect that, but naturally, a few months after I started my consulting company, I've seen that I had so much direct access to customers and customers of customers, because my customers wanted me to be in direct communication with their customers sometimes. So I've seen it was very efficient to meet a lot of technologies and a lot of companies. So within a few months, I already had a few ideas of startups, but I have to say that the vast majority of those I canceled between an hour to a couple of days. Okay, thinking about go-to-market strategy, competition, barrier to entry, and also, one of the ideas was it needs to start with a $50 million seed round, and I understood I'm not the person to lead that. Okay, so it's not for me. That's another important reason, to understand your limits, what you can and what you cannot do. But after a few months, I have to say I didn't see just a problem. It was a combination of a problem and shift of the market to do things differently. And maybe later we can elaborate that, because I described the shift to infrastructure as code as the third revolution after virtualization and the public cloud. But leaving that aside and answering back to your question, once I thought it's still yet to be proven, but once I thought that there is a huge shift here to infrastructure as code, and I have seen a business problem of a customer, it felt that I need to enter the market research phase. And, you can do that in parallel to other things. So it took me like 3-4 months to do, relevant market research. And it was quite clear from the beginning that there is a huge shift to infrastructure as code, and there are many opportunities for business solutions in that domain. And so with that, I knew that the next thing for me is to team up with the co-founder. And then the question was, which products we want to do what first, what is the fundraising. Not sure if this is where you want maybe your next question, but that's the next phase. After you understand that it's not a services company to solve that, it's a different type of a company to solve those challenges, that's when you start planning that from scratch. And that's another thing, that once you have an idea, how you progress to implementing that.
If you don't mind, go ahead, take it. Go to the next step.
Wow. So I have to say, honestly, the first question for me was, okay, I need a co-founder, because this idea deserves at least one product and fundraising. So I don't want to do it alone, and it's much better chances to do it with at least one more co-founder. So honestly, my first question was, what should I do? Should I be the CEO, or maybe CTO, or maybe something else? And I have to say that my initial thought was that I should not be the CEO, I should be the CTO. And I started looking for a CEO. And I've met with a few people that I thought might be relevant to be CEO. And after talking with them, I want to talk about maybe another thing. I read once an interesting blog post that gives grades from the worst to the best types of CEOs. And the worst one was CFO, and then the tech guy, and then the COO, and the marketing and sales, and the best one were the product guys. And so that's an interesting topic.
It is. There's books on this.
Yeah. And after meeting some potential CEOs, I came to a conclusion. Again, I might be wrong, but at least that was my conclusion then, and I still believe in that till now, that I understand best what kind of product should be built in order to solve those solutions and what customers will pay for and what are their pains. So once I convinced myself that I know this product well, I thought, okay, I'm shifting from finding a CEO to finding a CTO. And I have to say, this was easy for me to find a CTO. I have a bunch of friends that are very capable of doing so, and I'm very happy that one of them immediately agreed, and we shook hands. And then the next question was, actually there were two questions. Should we find a third co-founder? And when and how should we raise money? Do you want me to continue to the next questions, or?
Go ahead, you're on a roll.
All right, so the first question for us was, should we have a third co-founder? It was clear that if we want a third co-founder, the third co-founder should be with go-to-market and more biz dev kind of background. And so we immediately agreed that if we find such person, it has to be someone that we both know well, because we don't want that one of us only will know well. And in addition, we didn't want to find someone fresh because it will be imbalanced between us two old friends and a fresh person, because we thought forward how we build a good relationship between founders. So the list was empty. Okay, immediately we understood. I have a few friends that I thought might be relevant. My co-founder had a list of his own, but there was no match in between. So we then decided that we will fill this gap later on with the right investors, advisors, later on executives, and to fill this gap. And I want to say that now, about a year after this conversation, I think we fully did it. We have great VCs with us that are super relevant to what we're doing. And we have great advisors, Guy Pojarny from Sneak, and Reza Malekzadeh, who was the first business employee at VMware. And happy to say that we also have Alex Miller, ex-general manager of Stack Overflow Enterprise, that joined us recently as COO, that basically takes this part from, as an employee executive kind of point. So I feel that we feel that
was the right move. A lesson I've learned in starting a few companies is, look, in the beginning when you don't have money, right, you can't go hire someone with the talent, that you want. And so you substitute equity and make them a co-founder and stuff like that. And I've been in companies where there are, 4 of us, 5 of us, others 2. And then I've also been on the other side when you go to exit out, good, bad, right, exit out. And you know what? My advice is, too many cooks spoil the pot when it comes to co-founders, right? Because it's very hard. Every person you add adds another exponential kind of agreement that has to take place for something. So if you can raise the money relatively quickly, I think you're better off hiring the expertise, quite frankly, and building a great executive team, right? I just believe surround yourself with people smarter than you, right? And the advisors and stuff like that. Yep.
That's for sure. You know what Steve Jobs once said, that you bring great people not in order to tell them what to do, you bring great people in order that they will tell you what to do. So
exactly. That's what I've done. I like when I'm at the table and everyone else is brilliant and I'm just listening and watching and learning.
So it's very, very much alike.
Yeah, well, you get there after a while, I get there. So let me ask you, we're running out of time, but I got one more little subject I wanted to hit on, and that is, look, I always believe that the best time to launch a new company is when things are in chaos and turmoil and stuff is going on, because it's like there was just a forest fire and the whole forest burnt down, and now you have this fertile ground right? To which to grow the new growth, to grow the next wave. How has it been getting this all together with the whole COVID thing and everything going on?
I'm not sure I'm going to use the right word, but I like it when the situation forces you to focus. Okay.
Yeah.
I
agreed.
The situation now in the world is terrible, but on the other hand, it forces companies to focus on what really matters and get rid of the fat. Okay, so we are a very young company and we have very little fat, so the situation for us is quite simple, and we have a good enough runway. We're not fundraising at the moment, and assuming this blast will not last a few years,
Let's hope not.
Yeah, we're very much okay. So, by the way, another thing is that we started with a pre-seed and now announcing the seed round. And pre-seed, right, like Corona, is another thing that makes you focus and not run too fast. And once you need to focus, you listen better. Okay, you focus more on listening, and I think you're doing the right decision step by step. I think the best way to run fast is to do it step by step and run fast each step.
Microservices, right? It's building a company with microservices the DevOps way, right? We iterate, we reiterate, we iterate, we get feedback loops, we iterate, and it makes it better.
I think everything we're saying here in this interview is in general right, but there are always exceptions. So, sometimes 5 co-founders is the best thing for a company. It really depends on the situation.
Oh, there's been successes with 5. I just haven't had success with that. But anyway, Ohad, we're over time. Hey, I want to congratulate you on the launch of the product, on the seed funding and everything. Wish you best of luck. We will be following N0 over the next weeks and months, and keep us posted here on DevOps.com, Container Journals, our sites, as well as TechStrong TV. And we'll hopefully watch this unfold into a great story.
Thank you. I just want to summarize and thank you for having me. And I invite everyone seeing this video to enter our site m0.com and test our product. It's free during the beta. So we'd love your feedback. Just use it.
And that's env0.com, the number 0.
env0, yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Ohad Maslik, CEO, co-founder at N0 here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We'll be right back.
I got the burgers. I went to Bun Barn, Beef Patty Palace, Tomato Town.
Oh, thanks for getting all this, honey.
Yeah, no problem. Getting all of it just took about 2 hours.
I just wish there was an easier way to get all your burger fixings from one place,
Wow.
Dad, you didn't go to Mayo King?
You know our car doesn't fit in their drive-thru. I went to Mustard Chef.
I hate this burger.
He also went to ketchup.
When you're building something using components that don't work together easily, things could get ugly, fast. You wouldn't live like this, so don't make your DevOps team live like this.
This lack of burger cohesion is hard on all of us, Cheryl.
GitLab is the only single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle.
Okay, so best of luck to our friends at F0. We'll check in on Ohad and team maybe in a couple of weeks or months and see how they're making out. For our next segment, though, I'm really happy to have someone who's been contributing to DevOps.com now for like 5 years. Bob Resselman is a man of many hats. He is the creative genius behind Roll Bob. He's also the creative genius behind our latest comic book series called Microservice, the Decoupling superhero series. He's also written extensively on programming. He's taught at colleges and other institutions for developers and tech people. He's really been passionate about automation and the role that's going to play in jobs in the future. As a matter of fact, he's just published a book up on the Accelerated Strategies Group website, accelst.com. Bob is one of the analysts at Accelerated Strategies, and it really is a collection of his essays on automation. I think it's great. You'll enjoy it. But I think you'll enjoy the conversation I had with Bob even more. We touch on all of this and more. So let's now go to our conversation with Bob Resselman.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this segment of TechStrong TV. I'm really happy to have as my guest for this segment gentlemen I've had the pleasure now of knowing probably 4, 5, maybe 6 years. And he's been a regular contributor from DevOps.com since pretty early on. He's also, as I've gotten to know Bob, you realize really how complex and kind of mad genius he is beyond what you may know of him. And Bob is also one of the key analysts as part of the launch of the Accelerated Strategies Group, and he's doing some great work there with Mitchell and Sanjeev Sharma, Gary Groover, some of the other folks just doing good stuff. Let me welcome none other than Bob Resselman to TechStrong TV. Hey, Bob, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me, Alan.
My pleasure, my friend. So, Bob, I think a lot of our DevOps.com audience, of course, knows you as the mad genius behind RollBob, right? And for those of you, and for those of our audience who haven't had the chance, go on DevOps.com, go check out some of the RollBobs. Bob, for the last, has it been 4 or 5 years now, Bob? It's been a while. Yep. What is it, 2-3 times a week we do RollBob cartoons. They are the quintessential sort of geek software developer, DevOps kind of cartoons in that they really strike home. I mean, there are tech-related cartoons like Dilbert and stuff like that. But, I mean, your cartoons, Bob, just really, they just strike the right tone for the audience. So congratulations on that. What many people don't know about you, though, Bob, is that beyond the RollBob cartoons, you're a college professor teaching programming and technology to people. You are an accomplished programmer in your own right, having been in this business for probably longer than you care to admit to. Yes, care to admit to. Yes. And then on top of that, over the last 3 years plus, you've taken a really keen interest in how automation is going to affect our workforce, in the both short-term, near-term, long-term future. And you've done an extensive amount of writing on that. As a matter of fact, there's an article out on today's DevOps.com. I think it's called The Two Metropolises or something like that. Which is a really good article, haves and have-nots and so forth. So, but all of that aside, Bob, that's not why I asked you to come on the show today. I asked you for 2 other reasons. First of all, I wanted you to tell our audience a little bit about this new book you're publishing over on Accelerated Strategies.
Right. The book is The Impact of Automation. It's a collection or an aggregation of my essays that I actually wrote for DevOps.com over a period of 2 years. I think there's 28 essays in there. And so we put them all together into a single book. And they cover they cover the socioeconomic impacts of automation. And I wrote them. I've evolved over the time. I've done a lot of research. I've been watching things going on, and I have to say, I have concerns. I do have concerns, and it comes out of a place where I'm very aware of what it's sort of like. Not sort of like. I'm very aware of what it's like to not have money. I can say, a bit of revelation. If it wasn't for tech, I don't know where I'd be. I fell into it. I was very fortunate. I fell into it at the right time in the mid 80s. Before that, I really had no real marketable skill other than being a liberal arts student. And I did well. I can't complain. I did well, but I'm very aware of what it's like when you have to live paycheck to paycheck. That was really part of my world. And I still have a sensibility for what that's like. And I think that's what's happened is that we in tech we're compassionate, but our awareness is such that we live in a bubble. And the bubble is not of our making, it's sort of where we ended up. And by the bubble, I mean is that the average salary for a US programmer is between $80,000 and $100,000 a year. If you're a professional programmer, that's pretty much what you're making. Some make less, some make a lot more. I mean, if you've been at Microsoft for 20 years and you're a fellow, you're making a lot of money and elsewhere. And so that we tend to sort of lose track of what it's like when we have to come up with $500 because the car doesn't work. The car and I'm sensitive to that. And what I've seen is that people are saying that with the advent of automation, there's always been new jobs. And the introduction of the steam engine didn't eliminate horses. As a matter of fact, all those people that were probably taking care of horses went on to take care of steam engines. All right, and that's fair. But the difference now is that this is the age of the thinking machine, where machines can really start emulating human cognition, and that's a game changer. And that's a game changer because if we take, the pure Adam Smith, approach to economics is your labor is your value. The labor you contribute in society determines your value and your compensation. Okay, that's very good. And now I'm about to say something that's somewhat controversial and readers can write in later. But, it's a startling fact that in 1890 in New York City, there were 200,000 horses. Horses did everything. They pulled the wagons. They were the means of transportation. They didn't do everything. They didn't make pots and pans, but they were the major means of transportation. And as a matter of fact, the sanitation department was critical in the streets of New York because they picked up all the horse dung. It was a real sanitation issue. So remember the guy with the broom in the cartoons? That was a real job.
Peabody. Yeah.
And the horses died in the streets, and there were people that literally took the horses and threw them in the river. And horse culture horses were part of the landscape. Well, if you go to New York today in the Isle of Manhattan, if you find 1,000 horses, that's a find. There are no more there's no more horse labor. And so the translation of that is that horse labor, that degree of biological biological labor is no longer needed. Okay, we don't need horses. Cars can do it just as well. Cars have all the ability of a horse, except they can even come on command now. Okay,
right.
So what happens if a majority of human labor, human abilities, can be automated away? If we look in an automotive factory, it's all automated. If we start looking in warehouses, all automated. If we go to Amazon, all automated. A purchase in Amazon is automated, some fulfillment down the end. So what happens to those people? And I think that's an important question to ask. I think that's a real important question to ask and start considering. And I don't want to take 20 minutes going into it, but I talk about it in the book, and I talk about different aspects in the book, and the numbers are there. The numbers are there when you start paying attention to it.
It's crazy. But you know what, Bob? It was interesting. I was reading an article in The Atlantic today, and I don't even want to get into it because it gets political, and this isn't the place for it. But, it talked, it's almost like everything we're doing right now, Bob, we're looking it through the lens of the present crisis with COVID and everything else. And so when we look at the issue of automation and the future of workforces, we're going to have a new norm. We'll get through this, God willing, right? But there's going to be a new normal. And that new normal, I think for certain things, like automation, for instance, and as it relates to the workforce, this lens tends to be a magnifying lens where it accelerates what we saw happening before. So for the last 3-4 years, you're writing about this stuff, but I think we just put an accelerant, we just put gas on the fire here, right? And I think we are in store when we come back, that a lot of the stuff you saw that you thought might be a little bit further out is going to start happening much sooner than we expected.
Right. I write about that in this week's article. One of the things that's noticeable is how many tech workers are not out of jobs.
No.
I mean, if you're working in a restaurant,
I mean, there are some. I mean, but right, compared to the 22 million who have filed for unemployment over the last 3 or 4 weeks, it's a minuscule amount, right? We're being forced to work from home while watching Netflix, ordering delivery dudes or Uber Eats, and suffering through, maybe watching me do this 2-3 days a week or 2-3 hours a day, Monday to Friday. There are a lot of people who are worrying about where their next meal's coming from.
Right.
To your earlier point.
And it's because our environment is automated. I mean, I'm talking to a lot of people in a lot of companies, and they're saying, yeah, I've been working from home 2 days a week. Now I'm working from home 5 days a week. Right. And because the systems are there, we're independent of time and space. We can get, and you and I, you're in Florida, I'm in Los Angeles. We're just doing fine. We're just doing fine. But the woman that cuts my hair, she's not doing fine. I can't see her. You should notice I'm getting a little bit of the thing, right? But I can't see her. I can't see her.
No, and it's not only that. I got to tell you, my youngest son is a high school senior. So his prom was supposed to be Saturday, right? And that didn't happen. His graduation's not happening. I feel bad for him on a personal level because he's missing out on sort of these life events. But think about that whole economy because my wife and I were talking about this. There's a whole economy that revolves around proms and weddings and bar mitzvahs and so forth. The tuxedo guys, the caterers, the photographers, the musician DJs, the limousine drivers. How many jobs and how many dollars were snatched away because we didn't have a prom season this year? Or, so when you look at entire industries being shut down, us here in the tech industry we really can't say too much, right? We don't, with 2 loaves of bread.
Martin Ford wrote about this 4 years ago in his book, Rise of the Robots. And he talks about how critical consumption is, rank and file consumption. I mean, how many cell phones can Jeff Bezos use? He can't. He can use 1, maybe 2. You need all those cell phones out there.
Well, that depends if they were hacked or not. But
yeah. We'll give him 10. We'll still give him 10, right? So Jeff gets 10, but that's not 1 million or 2 million or the billion cell phones that are out there playing now. When those cell phone goes away, and they won't go away. But you're right. What happens to the dry cleaner? What happens to all these sort of essential services when they can't function? And that's real. And what you're saying is now hopefully we might want to start looking at alternative ways of running an economy on a grand scale. That's the hope.
Yeah. So to me, that starts sounding Star Trek-y, right? Are we talking about basic income, the Andrew Yang kind of thing, $1,000 a month, or are we talking about changing? It's not just the economy, but society, where our economy, our society is based on one's worth to a large degree, unfortunately, or not, is based upon your ability to earn money, right? And maybe how do you move away from that?
Well, we have. The fact is we have. And I don't mean the ability to earn money, but let's look at the other side of the coin, the need to spend money.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, money is only as good as you can spend on it, right? And so if people start, and I write about this week, but I've also written about it in the book. I talk about, there's a chapter in the book about UBI, Universal Basic Income, $1,000 bucks. And the problem with UBI isn't $1,000 a month, is that it's not enough.
Right.
It's just fundamentally not enough. And I do some analysis in there, and you can look at, I talk about countries where it is enough and countries where it's not enough and all that stuff. But right now, I mean, I'm not spending anywhere near the amount of money I used. I don't spend a lot of money, but I haven't gone out to dinner in.
There's nowhere to spend it. Well, so here's what I try to do, and I've impressed this on the kids. You know what? Thank God we are still functioning here at Media Ops, where we've kind of jigged things up a little doing this versus going out to conferences, and I feel blessed and lucky, and so what we try to do, Bob, is I try to order in at least twice a week from local restaurants to support them. Those that are open, like for instance, I rotate one car in our house every week for a full detail because the detail place is closed. You know, their car wash is closed, but the detail will come to your house, do it outside, and clean the car. You know what I mean? It keeps the guy working, and so I've tried to do this over and over with small local businesses here. I try to support them any way we can, buying gift cards that I'm not going to use for a couple months.
Yeah, that's
from locals as guys. Yeah, you know, these are all things we could do. It's going to be interesting though when stuff goes. You know, I keep saying normal, but it's not. When whatever's going to be is going to be, right? And we're allowed outside and start returning to some sort of, you know, patterns again. It'll be interesting to see the long-term effects here, and especially when we talk about automation.
And for me, it's at least having a discussion that the impact of automation is beyond us being able to provision 1,000 VMs. I get it, that's important. And I get that keeping a CI/CD pipeline working is important. I get all that stuff, just as, you know, keeping hospitals, you know, filled with stuff and, you know, keeping traffic flowing. That's all important stuff. And that's stuff we do and we've done well, and we're to be commended. I mean, we have made the world a better place. But on the other hand, there are going to be side effects. And I think the more telling one that came up to me, I was talking to my daughter yesterday, and they live in the Midwest, and the school year has been canceled completely. There's no more school this year. And, you know, my kids have been fortunate. My grandkids are fortunate. I got grandkids, and that they're going to be homeschooled, and they have parents that can participate. Okay, let's put it that way. They can participate. But there's a whole other section of kids, and these are children. Let's talk about if you're 7, 8, 9 years old. I mean, you're still
formative years.
Yeah, and you have a vestige of innocence. You didn't wake up and say, I'm going to go, you know, make things not well. Those kids have lost, a whole year, almost a half a year of school in a formative year. And how are they going to make that up? Will that have long-term effects? Right? And particularly if you think I'm learning to read now, and if you live in a home where there's no books or television is the primary means of information, what effect is that going to have on the long term? Is that going to create or is that going to continue to propagate the separation that many sociologists are commenting on?
I agree. And I'll give you, so those are the kids in those formative years. What about our college seniors? And look, my son, high school senior, he's going to college. So, that won't affect his career path. But college seniors who are graduating right now, or high school seniors who aren't going to go to college and are going to enter a workforce, this whole thing, internships and everything else, it's really sort of a lost year, and I don't know what that long-term repercussions of this is on it. It's a book that's yet to be written, right? And it'll be interesting. I'm sure they'll be doing sociology studies on this for years and years to come on these kids. We had the key latch generation. And now we're going to have a COVID generation of kids who, were a little behind. Anyway, Bob, the book is available on the Accelerated Strategies Group website as a PDF download?
Yes, it should be, yes.
And what's the name of it?
Impact of Automation.
The Impact of Automation by Bob Resselman. And for those who are not familiar, Accelerated Strategies Group is ACCELST, like Excel, ACCELST.com. And if you're not familiar with Accelerated Strategies Group, it's something we spun out here of MediaOps. My good friend Mitchell Ashley is the co-founder, CEO of it. Sanjeev Sharma, former CTO DevOps IBM, is a principal analyst. Bob is an analyst there. Gary Groover, Frank Olhurst, Helen Beal. There's just a superhero lineup of analysts over at Accelerated Strategies Group. Do check it out. Check out Bob's book. There's also a number of other books that these folks have all written that you can get to off of that site. Bob, I wanted to pivot a little bit, though, speaking of superheroes.
Superheroes.
Okay, and let's jump into the latest labor of love you've been going on. We have it running on Security Boulevard, and I think it's being ported over to Container Journal now as well. And that is the adventures of microservice, the decoupling. So let's start at the narrow, just this 12-part arc, and then we'll go to the larger part. What's it about?
It's a story about a superhero named Microservice and his sidekick named CICD, and he's battling his current nemesis, who is another nefarious superhero named Monolithra, right? And they're having a battle over a deployment of an application, and it's about to be decoupled. It's called the decoupling. And Monolithra does not want to see this application decoupled. She wants it to be maintained as a monolithic, tight structure for whatever reasons, her nefarious reasons. We're presently in episode 3, which is in the data center. So you can read episode 1. You can read the birth in episode 1, why microservice came to be, and then we can have the kickoff meeting. We're now in the data center. And we did the comic because, first of all, comics are just amazingly fun to produce. There's very little downside to making a fun comic, especially when you start looking at it. It's a very rich visual. We've done our homework.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let me just say that the comics, the graphics of the comics themselves are first rate. It's as good as anything Marvel turns out or any of that, and it's digital, and they really are great.
Yeah, so head out there now, to Security Boulevard and other places, and it's also a good way to start talking about some real issues we have in the digital infrastructure. Technically, in a how can I say this? In a non-threatening manner. And there are some real issues out there. And so we can talk about them and have fun with them and encapsulate the problems into heroes. So we have that, and we have a couple others coming up. We do one story a quarter, 12 episodes to a story. And then we're starting to plan another one. And we'll see where that goes. And, people can go down, take a look at the comic, tell your friends. I hope you do. We're always, if you want to send a story idea, figure out an email address to send the story idea for, maybe for the next one.
We'd love to. Actually, you don't even have to send the story idea. They could use, we have the community Slack here for TechStrong TV. It's techstrongtv.slack.com. If you go to techstrong.tv, you can grab an invite. Send an idea in for the next story arc. So a couple things. Bob, we are only in episode 3 of this 12-part arc. We are looking, just for some companies that are in the microservice space who may want to sponsor this and take it on their site as well, because it's dead on point. And it's really, in that same mad genius way you do roll, Bob, beyond the pretty pictures of the comic, there's a real message here in the words that'll appeal to the audience, to our cloud native folks, and to our microservices and DevOps and cyber folks. And so, if any of my vendor friends are out there interested in perhaps sponsoring this particular arc, let us know.
You don't have to be in the microservices. You can be in, distributed computing, or you can be in CI/CD, or, you can be in T-shirts. You can be anybody. Just want your logo out there, man. Rock on,
Absolutely. So I want to put that out there. But Bob, as you mentioned, this is a 12-part arc of a story,
episodes, yeah.
right? So and it's once a week, so it takes us through the quarter, and then we're going to have 3 more this year alone, right? Every quarter is basically a new story arc, new characters, everything.
Yep.
Though there may be some repeats. So it's a really interesting thing, and I hope people will get it and enjoy it. I'm going to try to have our video team, our editing team, throw up maybe while you're on this or afterwards, just a graphic so people can see what it looks like.
Yeah, one of
really
the comments that came up when we were doing planning, the renderings from the storyline is I decided I wanted to have a best friend like CI/CD, the sidekick. I want that to be my best friend.
We always do. I've wanted one since Robin a long time ago, but there you go. Anyway, so Bob, that's up there, and it's really great work. And of course, you still got the Robob stuff going on. Hey, we are way over time.
Sorry,
but don't be sorry. It was my fault. I just was, egging you on here. But thanks for joining us. Great, congratulations on publishing this book.
Yes.
Keep up the great work on the comics and everything else you do, my friend. Most importantly, stay well, stay healthy, stay strong.
Okay, here I am. Thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. All right, Bob Resselman, Accelerated Strategies Group, Robob, author, mad genius, here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We'll be right back with our next segment. Okay, back here in the studio. It's that time of the day when we do the news. And on today's Wednesday, I'm going to do a shorter news program because we do have quite a bit of information. I want to just highlight a couple things. Number one, I wanted to highlight an article. Actually, I wrote 2 articles this week, one on TechStrong TV, which if you're watching this, I don't know how much that article is going to be relevant to you. But one I did write is on TechStrong Con. And this is the conference we have that the chicken and the egg. TechStrong Con was the chicken and TechStrong TV was the egg. But we wanted to do something that show, though we can't get together in person in the technical community, we still communicate, we still collaborate, whether we're working from home or not. And that the strong tradition in technology of sharing, of communicating, of community continues. And so our virtual event is TechStrong Con. John Willis has spearheaded the speaker lineup. It's an amazing lineup of just chock full of headliners. But we'll actually probably have 2 or 3 speaking tracks, as well as a bunch of exhibits and usual kind of stuff at virtual events, chat rooms. I really encourage you all to go see it. And most of all, we're going to take a percentage of the sponsorship money and donate to a COVID-19 related charity. It's part of our contribution and the community's contribution to COVID. So go check out the article on TechStrong Con, the conference. It's on DevOps.com. I also wanted to point out, I mentioned we had the Bob Resselman interview you just saw. Go check out this microservice, the decoupling series. We've got 3 episodes of it up already. You can see it on Security Boulevard. Just click through. It's in the right-hand column and take a read on it. The artwork alone, the graphics alone are first rate. But the story, if you know anything about microservices or development and software and stuff, it's a really cool story. Bob does a great job. So please go check that out, number 2. And that's on Security Boulevard. There's still 40 or 50 new articles today on Security Boulevard. You can go read. If you're into cyber at all, there's something there for just about everyone. And then lastly, I wanted to point to Container Journal. Container Journal is sort of the baby brother of our 3 main sites. We only put up an article or 2 a day, but I want to call out, our friend Mike Vizard has just been doing an amazing job on Container Journal, and really happy with some of the articles he's written there. So if you go on there, even if you just want to know what's going on in the container world, the cloud native world, just follow Mike on Container Journal. And there's so many good articles there. I'm not going to pick out one or the latest, but go check out his last couple articles on the journal there. If you want to stay up on the cloud native world, there's no better place. That's all I'm going to do for the news today, because I feel like we have a long enough show. We've got some great content still to come, and we're well over an hour in now. So next up, let's turn things over to Charlene O'Hanlon. Charlene has Richard Wang of Tech for America. So Charlene, take it away.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Thanks, Alan. Welcome back, everybody. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at Media Ops, and I am here now with Richard Wang, who is CEO for a company called Tech for America. Richard, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Charlene.
So why don't we start off a little bit by you telling me a little bit about your company, what you guys are all about, and then we'll get into the news that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So our company's name is called Coding Dojo. We are starting a new initiative called Tech for America. And really the purpose of this new initiative is about helping small business to get back on their feet. I think, we can all hear from the news daily, we have this huge spike of unemployment numbers. And we are looking at right now currently cumulative 22 million Americans that's unemployed. I think by the end of April, we're looking at about potentially a 20% unemployment rate, which could be about, we're talking about 32 million Americans that is unemployed. And that is a huge number. And as we look at the businesses that are being impacted, majority are small businesses, medium-sized businesses. So we are really thinking about how do we leverage the Coding Dojo platform to do something good? And that's sort of like the genesis of Tech for America. Without alumni that Coding Dojo have trained, gone to companies such as Facebook, Google, and different companies, we are mobilizing an alumni base to help small businesses to build apps and different things to get back their feet utilizing technology so that they can have a better time reaching their customers.
All right. So basically the purpose of your program is to kind of partner developers with struggling companies who have been affected by the COVID-19 crisis economically, I would imagine, and kind of help them adapt and survive. So tell me a little bit about how this program works.
Yeah, absolutely. You can just Google search for Tech for America Coding Dojo. That will take you to the web page, the landing page of the site. And you can just say, look, I need a software developer to help me build some kind of interface with my customers, whether it's an app or a desktop application. And once you fill the form, we will be able to connect you with the developers that are looking forward to do the work. So far, we have more than 175 volunteers have registered, and they're coming from 28 different states, 9 different countries, Canada, Mexico, England, Japan, Spain, Australia, Kosovo, Nigeria. I think we are mobilizing a global alumni base to help the businesses that are currently being impacted by COVID-19.
So who are some of the companies that are kind of signing up to have the volunteers join the ranks, if you will? I mean, are you looking at small startups, or are they large enterprise companies, or maybe a mix of the two? What are you looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really hope Tech for America helps small business to survive during this COVID-19. Mm-hmm. And the companies that seem that we really wanted to lend a hand is the ones that they are being significantly impacted by their cash flow due to everybody staying indoors. We are looking to help small businesses or even medium-sized businesses to help to connect to their customers. And the projects right now, it's about creating, maintaining their website, building additional functionality to their existing site, like a restaurant adding takeout delivery services to their website, or assisting in any way that's meaningful from a digital and tech perspective. And I think the best way to think about this is kind of like in the United States, if I have Peace Corps to go and help other countries, this essentially we are trying to build a tech corp for America and really to help our small businesses to get back on their feet.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How did you come up with the idea for this?
Yeah, I mean, really, we have always been thinking about how we can leverage our platform, helping, the country that's the people in America that's being impacted. As you know, we're in the fourth industrial revolution. And this is the AR, VR, data science, AI, robotics. And even before COVID-19, millions of Americans are being, I call them their digital economy refugees, because a lot of their jobs getting eliminated by AI and machine learning. And what's happening, we are seeing is that they are going to the last mile, low tier, low skill sector, such as deliver, packages and whatnot. So we have always been helping, thinking about how do we help Americans to upscale. And so right now is the perfect time for the people who've been trained by us, that's already upskilled, to help them, small businesses, and the people who are stuck at home. We hope we can provide a lending hand to help them upscale. And so helping Americans to upscale and helping small businesses is part of our company's DNA.
That's great. That's great. So I know you guys have some other programs available to developers who maybe are looking to kind of, I don't want to say bulletproof their employment, but or their expertise. But I know that continuous learning is always a big thing. So what do you guys have that's going to help maybe those developers who want to make sure that they keep their they keep their expertise and their everything up to date to kind of help them get over the hump, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. I think due to the COVID-19 situation, we have launched several additional technology programs online to help existing developers to reskill and upskill. We have virtually many, I think 3 more additional education product offerings for the existing developers to learn a new technology language. And what we are seeing so far right now is a lot of testing engineers, QA engineers, and some of the technologists know C# and .NET technology stack, wanting to learn more and upskill with the new open source technology languages, and that's what we specialize in. And so you can feel free to go to codingdojo.com and check it out, the new programs, but we're here to help. And then essentially, our mission is about empowering people in every phase of their lives through digital literacy. And, as you can see behind this banner, it's about solving for X. Right now, X is how do we help small business get on their feet? For some people, X is, how do we upskill and get to the relevant skill sets? So we're always empowering people to find how to leveraging Coding Dojo to empower them to their next steps of their career.
That's great. That's really great. So, I'm kind of curious what your outlook is on kind of the employment market for developers in general these days, especially in light of what's happening. As you said, 22 million folks filing for unemployment. I mean, we're talking about some huge numbers there. And I'm wondering, do you think that that's actually going to impact, and if so, to what degree the developer, the ranks of developers out there?
Yeah, so I'll just take one step back. Even before COVID-19, if you look at the numbers, I think globally we have about 7.1 billion people. Only 22 million people are developers. And every single country needs them for the fourth industrial revolution, for the digital transformation. And so I think with COVID-19, things will only accelerate. And, I think let's now focus on America. I think if you look at, so globally, there's already shortage of the supply and demand of developers. And now let's focus on America. I think, there are many different kind of economic recovery curves that's being projected out. Is this going to be a V-shaped recovery curve where economy dip down, come back right up? Is this going to be a U-shape, goes back down, but slowly recovery? Is this going to be a W-shaped recovery where things dip down and then recover and then go back down, go back up? Or is this going to be an L-shaped recovery? Things dip down, recover slowly. It doesn't matter what type of curve that this will be. I do believe this accelerates the digital transformation for every single company. I think virtually this also is going to shift Americans' habit in the way how we interact with businesses. Now, a lot of people who are not used to the Grubhub, the Uber delivery, after this, 3 months to 4 months staying indoors, they're used to this habit. And so I think Americans are only going to come more takeout deliveries being delivered to your household, and I think many other digital economy habits are being formed. And so this is only going to accelerate the digital transformation process. And every single company, you have to believe that you are a tech company. If you don't have that kind of mindset, it's just a matter of time. You're going to have to shut down doors. And so I really think about right now is a perfect time to think about what is your digital strategy. Let's assume there is another outbreak for COVID-19 because of, as you see in the news, and then you see from the scientists, COVID-19 follows the flu pattern. It's part of the flu family, the coronavirus. And so we may very well have another outbreak before we have a vaccine. And so the question as we opening up America is really to ask ourselves, if there's an outbreak, how is my company going to be ready for the next shutdown, right? And for the next digital social distancing. And so that should be the thesis of your strategy. I mean, you cannot get away from not having a digital strategy.
But I think you're right. I think obviously we have to accelerate our digital transformation, and that means the companies need to think more with a digital first mindset, and that includes having the applications available to their employees the next time this happens. And there will be a next time. I think we're all pretty much in agreement there. But I think what you guys are doing is great, and I hope that I'm sure you guys are going to make a huge difference with a lot of small businesses, and and making that difference between whether they can stay open and stay in business or have to shutter their doors. So kudos to you for that. Really, really good stuff there.
Thank you so much, Charlene. And just again, for Americans who want to upscale and rescale, please go to codingdojo.com. If you're interested in developers or want to sign up to our the Peace Corps for America small businesses, please just Google search Coding Dojo, Tech for America, and then you will take you to that page. Thank you so much for the time today.
All right, great. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Yep.
All right, stay tuned for more TechStrong TV coming up in just a minute.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
All righty. Thanks, Charlene. Great interview. You know what? Tech for America, it sounds like a great project. If you're watching and you find it interesting, why don't you go volunteer? It's a great way to build your resume as well for our young developers out there, and it's just a worthy cause. Next up, though, let's head over to the Analyst Corner with Mitch. It's Mitchell Ashley, CEO, co-founder of Accelerated Strategies Group.
Well, the conversations about reopening our government, reopening our economy, et cetera, have gone from talk about to even some states taking actions, including the state I live in Colorado. What I'm perplexed a little bit about is, or actually a lot, is we've said much more testing needs to be ramped up before we can take those actions. And even some of the plans include or reference that, but it isn't there. It's not in place. So what are we doing? I'm not quite sure that what we're reopening is going to be helpful in the end. Hopefully it doesn't lead to regain, reprise of the infection and going through all of this again. I certainly hope not. Well, let's think about the business environment as well. I think we're learning a lot about people working from home. Maybe we're surprised of some of the results as well. We have data to show how much people enjoy working from home. We're collecting some data right now. We'll share at the end of the week. Pretty insightful about why people prefer working from home when they do, whether it's full-time or at least some number of days of the week. But I think we have to start planning not how do people come back or re-enter the work environment, but think about what does that work environment look like now? Do we have to put social distancing measures in place? As we've gone to an open office environment, guess what? Densities of people in buildings has increased, not decreased. So it's actually a bit of a paradox. We can't have everybody come back and implement social distancing policies, most likely in most situations. So what does that look like? Are we putting plexiglass in places? Are we asking people to wear masks in the work environment? Are there separation guidelines? How many people can be in the cafe or the break area at a time? How often are we doing cleaning? Are they doing disinfectant? All kinds of questions. Those are just a few of them. How many people can be in an elevator at one time? It's going to be kind of hard to be 6 feet away in an elevator. Fundamentally, I asked the question of, well, if it's working, things are working well working from home, why would you ask people to come back unless there's an explicit need? There's a real purpose behind it. And yes, leaders have had to adjust and maybe learn some new skills of how to work with people, support people, manage people, lead people when they're not, a step away. Particularly micromanagers. And well, I don't feel sorry for them. Maybe this is kind of the payback for being a micromanager for all those people that really hated that experience. You can't micromanage people. At least you can't do it effectively, separated while working from home. So as we implement some of those, think about distancing measures. Also, we think about kind of what does business look like in the future. I know we've gone to virtual conferences instead of in person, and maybe some of those things will return again with some of those distancing practices in place. I suspect, though, we're going to see much, much less business travel. Why get on a plane when we've begun to implement and hopefully begin to perfect the virtual conferences and figure out ways to make up for some of the gaps around doing business development and building relationships with customers and going out to dinners and those kind of things that we also do at conferences. There'll have to be other ways to figure out how to do those kind of things. But those are just a few of the things to think about what our kind of new business looks like. It's interesting, the things that I've heard from IT organizations, some are being slashed and pulled back and being conservative, not knowing what the economic environment's going to look like. But also some are being increased. Some budgets are going up. They're accelerating their work. They're spending and speeding up their implementations of digital transformations, which frankly, if you can do that, I think that's the way to go. You want to be able to leverage that because in some ways, that's probably going to determine who survives, who doesn't. So I guess I would conclude with this idea of maybe some of those temporary measures we put in place to deal with stay-at-home orders, now look at it as what should be permanent. And don't go back to the old model of, well, let's work from home, but you got to get your manager's approval and it can only be a couple days for work. Flip it on its head. People now are enjoying this work from home environment, at least many people are. Taking it away may be taken in a benefit. So let's rethink it, not adjust just how we used to do things and do it a new way, create the new way that work's going to carry us into not just 2020, but the next decade, which is really what we're creating now. So I wish you the best as you're both working through the COVID situation and also the economic impact to your company. And I hope you are able to find ways to create more productive and work situations for people and also ways to invest to help grow and not just survive, but figure out where those opportunities where you can either accelerate or remake parts of your business to work in an economic environment. We're all still learning about what it might be. Wish you the best.
Right now, software is more important than ever. It is powering the online services enabling teams to connect, collaborate, and work remotely, and allowing innovation to continue to get to market rapidly. CloudBees offers software delivery automation solutions to support all remote teams, and you can use the best-in-class tools you need to get the job done. CloudBees helps you build stuff that matters. Visit cloudbees.com to learn more.
Hi, this is Mitch Ashley, and I am with Vince Capitelli, correct?
Correct.
And we just finished a roundtable session, and Vince led a very convincing, compelling discussion about a lot of different things. But one of the things you talked about was tying everything back to a business value, some kind of a strategy, some kind of a benefit to the business for digital transformation. You want to share some of your philosophy about that?
Sure. Well, I've been in technology and technology risk management for a number of years, you can imagine. And I'm a big advocate of, it's called the COSO, C-O-S-O model for enterprise risk management. And COSO, their whole methodology and framework is very focused on tying everything down to being aligned with the business. Business purpose, business objectives, business risk. And then translate, if you will, when you start looking at risk and identify your business risk, try to relate or correlate those risks to technology risk. So you can have a conversation with a business person or a technology person. And the technology person you talk to about the technology risk, explain the impact on the business. To the business executive, you talk around about the business risk and what the IT organization has to do to manage that technology risk component of it.
So
and so I find you can really have a decent conversation about the business. You don't have to use a lot of acronyms. I'm a big believer in trying to put everything you want to communicate on no more than like 3 pages and keep things relatively simple.
It's always better when things are simple, right?
Simpler the better.
Especially for some of us.
Well, and especially we live in a world today where everything is changing so fast, including the business, including your competition, including the environmental environment you have to live and work in, as well as all the technology, that it's hard for keep someone in tune with all of those different vectors. So focus on the simple things in a simple aspect of communication, in which they can focus on the things that are important to them. Then you can correlate what's important to you to what's important to them, and then you know what to focus on.
Are there some themes that you picked up in today's interchange, CISO, CIO, that you're taking away from today?
Well, number one, I think many people are focusing on this phenomenon of digital transformation. I would say that many of them are struggling with it. And on the other hand, if you went back to whatever business transformation was 10 or 20 years ago, it's the same. The biggest resistance, if you will, or the biggest friction factor is with getting employees and customers to change. So that would suggest that maybe before you start effectuating change, you should spend a lot more time on trying to understand how do you convince people, or what's that person's skin in the game to jump in on the bandwagon and want to change. Because if they don't want to change, and if they don't think it's a better outcome for them, then you're going to meet a lot of resistance.
It's always better if you can personalize the change. What's the benefit to them?
What's in it? What's in it for me? Exactly.
So last question. I think they're talking about the next interchange being in Seattle. I think I heard the September timeframe. What would you say to a CIO, CISO out there who maybe hasn't attended one of these yet? What's a good reason why you think others should come and participate?
Well, I think if you want to have some real insight and be able to talk person to person, who's to an individual who's going through the same challenges that you are, and hopefully meet some people who may have already solved some of those challenges, or not, because failure can be a good teacher. But being able to sit down across face to face, across from the table, and have a conversation with someone who's in the same shoes you are, and you can better empathize with him as to what you've tried that didn't work, what you've tried that do work, and then he'll feel a lot better asking you similar questions, and then you can engage him and see what experiences have he had that could be helpful to you.
Very much a network of peers.
Exactly.
Great opportunity to talk with others in maybe different industry, maybe the same, but in the same shoes in many ways.
Right, exactly.
Well, thank you for leading the session, and appreciate
My
you
pleasure.
being here.
Thank you.
I learned a lot from being in your group, so thank you.
Okay. You can take that to the bank.
There we go. It's worth what we paid for it, right?
Thanks again.
You bet. Bye.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Okay, back here in the studio, we've got one more segment for this Wednesday, April 22nd. And she, you know what? God bless her. She anchors us every Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday at the end of the show. It's my partner and friend, CEO of DevOps Institute, Jane Grohl. And Jane has some good stuff to talk to us about today. Jane, over to you.
This is Digital Anarchist at DevOps Enterprise Summit, London, 2019.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com on the Digital Anarchist. We're coming at you from London for DevOps Enterprise Summit 2019. And I'm really happy to be joined here by, my partner, co-founder in DevOps Institute, Jane Grohl. Jane, welcome. And to Jane's right is another member of the Institute, or a new member of the Institute, an old new member of the Institute. She's been around with us for a while, but I guess it's official now. Evelyn, and Evelyn, I'm drawing a blank on your last name all
It's
of
all
a
right,
sudden.
Ehrlich.
Evelyn Ehrlich. Evelyn is Research Director
Chief Research Analyst
of DevOps Institute. And of course, we're here to talk today about, you're presenting, right?
I am presenting, around noon today.
You want to quickly mention that before we jump into what we want to talk about?
Sure.
Or maybe we could segue it.
We can absolutely segue in. So really happy to be speaking today. I'm talking about a topic that's really passionate for me, which is the relationship of service management to DevOps, most specifically about ITIL and site reliability engineering and how they relate to the three ways. So that's pretty exciting. I think there's a lot of pivot going on in the ITIL space, trying to figure out how to stay relevant. I think that the SRE space is really emerging very quickly. And, Alan, as a segue to what we're going to talk about with upskilling, site reliability engineering showed up in our data as a role that's being hired, and certainly practices that are starting to trend.
Oh, yeah.
Really
I
well
think
and
the
quickly.
cat's out of the bag on that. It's interesting in that, this is the first day of DevOps Enterprise Summit. I think this may be my third or fourth interview of the morning. Second one, the first one was ITSM in DevOps, right? And how those silos are breaking down and how we're working together. So it's certainly a theme that we're seeing here, and I think it talks to the maturation of DevOps. I was with Sasha Labarre, the CEO of CloudBees, and he said, when DevOps first came out, we were a bunch of punks, and we thought we could exist independent of these frameworks that so many people have invested so much money in and everything. And that's a quote from him. And now we're finding out, no, it don't work like that. We need to make this all work together.
Yeah.
And of course, the backdrop to this though is that what are the skills that people need in our industry to make this all work, to make heads or tails of the multitude of tools and the skill sets and roles and initials, that we hear. And of course, that's something, Evelyn, you've worked on.
Yeah, actually, Jane and I are celebrating our 1-year anniversary because we met here last year, and I went to her session, and I hadn't seen her for a while. And so after the session, I'm like, hey, we're hugging, kissing. And she's like, we need to think about this skills thing. We need to go deeper. Like, yes, are you interested? Yes. So we buddied up and finally decided we need to go and find some data. We need to find out what are those human skills people are actually needing. And we have them. We know the human skills are the third most important skills in DevOps. People always say culture, DevOps fails because of culture, but what is culture? Culture is made up of us people who are having certain skills, and that's what we found out, some great, cool things there.
Yeah, and I think part of the maturity, when you talk about maturity in DevOps, is that in the early days, it was very much about how do I build a CI/CD pipeline, which is still important. But I think enterprises, vendors, and other thought leaders in the space are starting to realize that all of this happens because of people. We say human because we're all human, regardless of anything else, however you self-identify, we're all human. And so when we started to think about, okay, what skills, we talk a lot about upskilling, right? We talk about skills transformation, we hear a lot about skills constraints. But what skills, right? How do we make T-shaped people, right? And if somebody's not familiar with T-shaping, the stem is your deep competency, but the top of your T is broad. How do we tell people what skills should you add to the top of your T, and how do you know? And so that was the genesis of Evelyn and I working together, Evelyn fielding a very, very deep survey on what are the skills that are considered must-have, nice-to-have, not important. And I think the results, the data has just been, in some ways, a surprise to us because it's so deep.
Yeah.
We could also differentiate between what were the must-have skills executives wanted versus what individual contributors thought were the must-have skills. So it was interesting in the human skills we found, let's just take the top category of human skills, we found that the executives value soft skills, human skills much more than the individual contributors, right? They were very much thinking that multiple programming languages, APIs, CI/CD tools were very important. Yes, of course they are, but again, different roles and organizations are trying to and looking at what is important for getting people in or retraining people or restaffing their teams.
Yeah. I can't emphasize this enough, of course. When we talk about T-shaped individuals, and I almost think of it as, look, everyone has that I, right? That deep, well, everyone hopefully strives to have that deep knowledge. And when we put the T on top of it, it's almost horizontal across silos, if you will, of deep knowledge. But how long is it until we move to, you whether call them comb-shaped individuals or broom-shaped individuals that have multiple wells of deep knowledge? And we've seen it, you see it in medicine, right? The death of the family practitioner for the specialist. And then multi-dimensional specialist, right? It's not enough to be an oncologist. You have to have the, pulmonary oncologist kind of thing where you're a pulmonologist on top of it. I think, fortunately or unfortunately, that's kind of where we're heading here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely true, but I would caution, particularly anybody listening to this, the overachievers in the universe, right? Well, everybody's going to try to go to become pie-shaped or comb-shaped, and they're going to focus very much on, how many deep competencies can I add to my portfolio? Right now, I think where we really need to emphasize is keep grooming your core specialty, but first start with what goes in the top of your T, because my concern is that people start looking at comb-shaped or broom-shaped or pie-shaped or whatever, and they start going, well, I need to be deep in everything. It's overwhelming, right? So the first step is look at the top of your T. What skills do you need to add to that? If you're a developer, maybe you need to develop basic testing skills, right? You don't need to have the deep competency in testing yet, but you do need to add that to your top of your T. So the top of your T is kind of like a bucket, right? And you just keep adding new skills, new interests, new mentoring, new training to that so that you are such a broad-based generalist supplementing your deep knowledge. And then if something strikes you from a passion or a job and you want to develop a second set of deep competencies, that's awesome, right? But my concern is that we're going to have so many people going, oh, I must be broom-shaped now, that what will happen is they'll miss the message that is really the top of the T that counts.
Right.
Right.
Let me add something else too on top of what you just said, Jane. There is a lot of fear around automation and being automated away, right? As we talk about, in Europe, we talk a lot about Industry 4.0. In the US, it's digital operations, digital intelligence, blah, blah, blah. A lot of folks in IT, my age, baby boomers, are fearful that they're being automated away. Well, maybe, because with AI and machine learning, we have the capability to do certain things, and we do have it in medicine already, where we don't need the people. Meaning, we don't need the people write code, we don't need the people to do certain things in the development of the software and the delivery. But we do need people who are able to show empathy, collaborate, communicate, et cetera, and that DevOps human is going to be a much more successful DevOps human than those who learn programming languages and API, et cetera, et cetera. Not saying that those are not important, those are important, but to a certain extent, at some point, those things will be automated away, but you cannot automate empathy yet.
Yet.
We both say yet. But I think that's very important, and I think, again, it's probably one of the areas of, the whole culture thing in DevOps gets a lot of lip service, but not a lot of effort in many organizations, because they say culture schmulture, give me my tools. And those are the same organizations, mind you, that 6 months or a year later say, oh, our DevOps transformation wasn't as successful as we thought it would be. Well, there's a reason for that. So it's been now, you guys met a year ago. The DevOps skills survey came out, I guess it was around the first of the year, February?
The report came out in early February. The survey was launched last October. The new survey will launch this August.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
I knew
Is
that.
there a new survey? Comes out this August? Is it going to be on the same exact stuff as last year, or?
Yeah, so there is a little bit of a mix. Some of the questions we want to make sure we have year-over-year trends. So when you do research, it's important that you have year-over-year trends so you can see the delta. Are we getting? Is there something changing in the perception and in the must-have skills of either functional or in the soft skills or whatever we were asking? So some of the things will be the same. So we see a trend. And then we will add some new things. So if people have ideas, we're open, we're here. This is why I'm here this week, to listen to the speakers, meet some of the folks, talk to the sponsors, and get out what is it you want to know. Now, of course, a survey, there's only a limited amount of questions you can have. I don't know how long your patience is for surveys. It's typically
5 to 7 minutes is me.
So you would jump out after question 5, but we have about 35 questions or so. It's max. And people have done, we've had 1,600 responses, so which is great. And I want to stay at that because we don't want to turn people off. So it's about 80%, I would say, maybe 75% year over year, and then another 25% new.
Excellent. And we've had about 2,000 downloads. So
of the report,
and a lot, of the report, and so a lot of good coverage, a lot of good feedback about the value of the data. Again, as a benchmark year, I think that was awesome. Now looking at year 2, let's do a comparison. What did we find out the first year? Which really broke down into automation skills, process skills, function skills, and soft skills, which we're now rebranding as human skills, because soft skills are hard, right? So everybody thinks that soft skills are organic. They're not, right? So we're now reframing them as human skills. But interestingly enough, in the report, the automation, the process, and the human skills came out statistically equal as must-have. So that was also fascinating. So we're going to be able to validate, I think, this year, is that still the case? And is there still a difference between what the C-suite thinks and what the practitioner thinks? So really, really excited about this.
Now, one idea we had, as we're women in technology, I want to push that a little bit because that's quite important for me. I've been in technology forever. I don't know anything else than cooking. Is do we want to slice this in the male versus the female? Do we want to see, is there, particularly on the soft skill side, are there different kinds of perspectives? And the same for the technology and the process skills. So I think Jane is like, yeah, I think we should do that. So
I'd like to see
Your
it in a
thoughts?
man-woman
Yeah?
perspective,
Yeah.
but I would also like to see it from an age perspective. You mentioned something before about baby boomers, and I'm a baby boomer. I don't know about you two.
Not me.
but in all honesty, and all kidding aside, automation isn't really going to have as much
Interesting
as
idea.
effect on our careers because we'll probably be done by the time it really kicks in. But when you look at the Gen X's and the Ys and
love
the
that idea,
Zs
Alan.
and the millennials, I think it's a
That is
big
really- that's a
fear in
good
their
idea.
life. And, and conversely, not that baby boomers are smarter, because God knows we've made a mess of the world, but I think with age and experience comes more empathy that maybe younger people still need to learn. And so it'll be interesting to see their human
Excellent idea.
skills.
Look
as
at
you
it from a
call
demographic perspective. We were talking about doing regional, which I think is important as
Regional's
well.
another thing.
But I think demographically,
No, I
that
think
makes a lot of
age
great
demogra-
sense.
Because I think empathy, you said something before about hard skills being learned. I don't think you're born with empathy. Or maybe you have the capacity for empathy,
Right.
but I think your ability to empathize grows with your life experience.
Yeah, I mean, skill, knowledge, ability, very really different things. Skills, you can be taught, you can learn. Knowledge, you can also get through training and experience. Ability is typically something you are with, some capability you come to earth with from your parents. It's a genealogical thing, and then you somehow get still some of that through coaches, so people who are impacting your life no matter where you live or where you're from.
And I think enterprise-wise, there's an expectation that it is organic, that somehow you're born as a better empathizer or you're born as a systems thinker. And that's not true. And I think that's why they struggle with culture, because they don't know how to teach it, mentor it, or support it. They just assume it is. And so that's part of, I think, of our goal in being able to, and again, the report doesn't only focus on human skills, but the human skills really rose up as something that needs some attention.
Yeah. And hence the humans of DevOps.
It is the humans of DevOps. Good
All
segue.
right. And on that note, we're going to call it a wrap on this episode. This is Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com on the Digital Anarchist in London for DevOps Enterprise Summit 2019. Evelyn, Jane, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon, everyone. Thank you, Jane. I appreciate you taking the time every week to give us an insightful and great little segment. Guys, if you stayed through now all the way here to the end, I appreciate it. Our show was a little long today, but we're trying to put more and more content out there. There's so much going on. We want to try to keep you appraised of it. We want to make this show better. So again, follow us on the community Slack. TechStrongTV.slack.com is our community Slack channel. We'll be back on tomorrow with another great lineup of interviews and news. But until then, this is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. Stay well, stay strong. TechStrong.